Okay, then I'll make a start. So I thought we could start with some of the B1 topic of organisation. So remember, still B1 paper, which is the paper you're going to have on Tuesday next week. So B1, and let's do within the organisation topic. Remember, we've got to know about the digestive system. And we need to know about the cardiovascular system. And within the cardiovascular, we are then looking at the lungs, and cardiovascular and respiratory system. So we're looking at the lungs and we're looking at the heart. So first things first, let's have a think about the structures within the heart. The diagrams that they can give you are all going to be extremely varied. I would say the easiest way to do your drawing of the heart is to just initially think of it as a box. And then you can split that box in 4. And we can add some bits going in. We can add some bits coming out. Again, add some bits coming in and some bits going out. And with any question about the heart, we need to be able to identify which side of the heart is left and which side of the heart is right. And it's you can't tell from this picture straight off, and indeed you wouldn't be able to tell from a diagram in the exam, unless they labeled it. Maybe they've been kind to you and labeled it with words, but they will make it very obvious on the diagram. They will put something like this. They will make one edge, either this side or this side, thicker. And whichever side is coloured in thicker is therefore the left side of the heart. The majority of the pictures are going to be this way around, and they're going to make this side look thicker, and that's because it has a thicker muscle, and that's because this thicker bit of muscle is having to compress to push blood all around your body. It's got to be really high pressure when it leaves the heart, and so left-hand side is thicker, and this is thicker muscle. And then we've got our chambers. So we've got this one here, and this one here, and we've got this one here, this one here. So we need to know what these 4 chambers of the heart do. And you know, this is a pretty rudimentary drawing, because what's actually going to happen is this is going to connect to here. So imagine that's not like that, not there, and this is going to connect to here. Then we're going to try and ignore that line. So colour it in, get rid of it. Okay, so we've got LA, LV, RV, and RA. Can you see if you can remember what they stand for? Maybe write them out in full. And then see if you can label these 4 vessels that carry blood either to the heart or away from the heart. I'll give you a minute to have a think about labeling them. So there are 4 there. Have a think about labeling them, and then I will give you the letters, and then we'll see if we can come up with the actual names. And then we'll try and remember what the actual flow is of blood through the heart and where it's going to go. So see if you can label all of these. There are 4 vessels feeding blood to the heart and carrying blood away from the heart. Okay, so if we start with the left side of the heart, and let's have a think about what the left side of the heart is doing. Well, it's pumping oxygenated blood all over the body. It's got to go from this point in your heart all the way to your fingertips, and so it needs to be really high pressure. So there needs to be a really big vessel that can carry the blood at very high pressure, and that is your aorta. So huge artery that is able to carry blood all over your body at very high pressure, and it's got a special name. It's called the aorta. Now this blood coming in then into this left atrium, this blood is oxygenated, so it must have come from your lungs. If it's oxygenated, that's where your blood has picked up all of that lovely oxygen, and so it must have come from your lungs. So we'll work this out in a second. But this oxygenated blood is going to flow into the left atrium. The left atrium contracts and pushes that blood down into the left ventricle, and it actually passes through a valve here, and that valve stops any backflow when this bit then contracts. So when this contracts, this bit here closes, and so rather than blood being pushed back up into the left atrium, it is now pushed at really super high pressure out of the heart into the aorta and all over your body. So if it has come from the lungs, then we use a really lovely scientific term for the lungs, pulmonary, and it's going towards the heart. So all vessels going towards the heart are called veins. So it's the pulmonary vein carrying oxygenated blood, left atrium through the valve, left ventricle contracts really high pressure and pushes it out through the aorta. So LV, left ventricle. Okay, so this lovely blood travels all over your body, and the red blood cells carrying that oxygen in their hemoglobin drop that oxygen off at the cells that are respiring, aerobically respiring, using up that oxygen, combining it with combining it with glucose to release water and carbon dioxide and a little packet of energy. And so then the blood needs to return to the heart to then be pushed back to your lungs. And this is why you have a double circulatory system. This first bit from the lungs to the body is circling lovely oxygenated blood to your body. And then this second system takes the deoxygenated blood. So we'll get our deoxygenated blood if it will show up. That's it. Deoxygenated blood, and that's going to return through a vein with a lovely special name, and that's called the vena cava. Vena cava, however you'd like to pronounce it. And then again, we need to have a valve here to stop any backflow. It's not as high a pressure that's created on right side of the heart. Not as high pressure created on the right side of the heart, but we still need to prevent this bit of backflow here. So this really clever valve lets the blood flow through this way, but not back up from the ventricle to the atrium. So that then means that this deoxygenated blood can now be pumped to your lungs. So on this side of the heart, the blood's going to travel to your lungs. So again, we're going to use this fancy term for the lungs, and this is therefore called the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Again, arteries are away from the heart. So the aorta is huge artery, and pulmonary artery carrying it lower pressure than the aorta, but carrying it to your lungs. And therefore these two here, right ventricle, and this one here, right atrium. Right ventricle, right atrium. It's worth then understanding that some of the blood that is supplied to your body also needs to be supplied, to the respiring cells in your body, also needs to be supplied to the heart itself. And therefore, on the outside, if we were to cover this heart diagram up, we would be able to add 2 vessels running over the heart. We would have one sort of running like this, and another one sort of running around like this. And these would be your right coronary artery and your left coronary artery. And they're important because they are going to supply your cardiac cells with the nutrients, and they're going to remove the waste being produced by aerobic respiration. So right coronary artery, this is on the outside of the heart now. We've filled it all in, we've covered it up. This is a lovely artery supplying lots and lots of blood to the heart muscle, and then same again on the left side, supplying blood to the left side of the heart. One thing it's worth having a think about, and a relatively common question that you might want to go away and spend a bit of time on and have a bit of a go at, is what the actual pathway of the blood through the heart is. So pathway of blood through the heart. Quite a common question, and it means that you have a really good understanding. If you're able to write this in prose, bullet pointed potentially, but in prose, then it also links nicely to this diagram. It means you're going to have a good memory of this diagram. Okay, I'm going to have a little go now. I'm going to start from one side of the heart. Let's start here. Let's start left-hand side. Deoxygenated blood is going to enter via the vena cava. So let's see how quickly we can do this. 1, deoxygenated blood enters the heart via the vena cava. Deoxygenated blood enters the heart via the vena cava. It is entering into the right atrium. I'm going to abbreviate it to RA, but it's entering into the right atrium. It's going to pass through the valves, through the heart valves that we had on our diagram above. And then into the ventricle. And when the ventricle contracts, I'm going to write RV, right ventricle contracts. The blood is then going to be pushed up through the pulmonary, and it's away from the heart, so it's an artery, pulmonary artery. Okay, so that's 50% of it, isn't it? Is deoxygenated blood enters the heart via vena cava into the right atrium, passes through the valves, down into the right ventricle. When the right ventricle contracts, is pushed up through the pulmonary artery. And where's it going? Well, it's off to the lungs, where gas exchange can take place. So there's half. Okay, I need to change the page, so I'm just going to turn the page and we'll do the other half. But that's first half of our pathway of blood through the heart. That will change now, and we'll go for our second half. Oxygenated blood then from the lungs. Oxygenated blood from the lungs is going to enter the heart via pulmonary vein. Enters via the pulmonary vein and into the left atrium. It's going to go through the valve. Then the left ventricle contracts. And is pushed, therefore, at high pressure up through the aorta. So, quite common question. They might get you to label the heart, and then they might say, okay, we'll describe the pathway of a blood cell. And if you've got that diagram in your mind, before you write your full marker, it might just be worth doing a quick jot of your heart, draw it. You've got that one there, and that one there, that one there, that one there, and then just put your letters on. Okay, this side's thicker, so that's LV. I know that's A. I know this one, pulmonary vein in, right atrium, left atrium even. So left atrium, left ventricle, up through aorta. Same on this side, vena cava, right atrium, right ventricle, out through pulmonary artery. Have that little sketch and then remind yourself, okay, it was blue. I mean, the blood isn't actually blue, but it was blue on this side because it's deoxygenated, because it needs to go back to the heart, and it was red on this side because it was oxygenated and off round the rest of the body. Okay, we'll stick with the heart. Let's go for a little bit more on the heart. It is worth us having an understanding of what the general adaptations are of the heart to make it more efficient. How is your heart adapted to the job? So, firstly, the walls of ventricles are much thicker than the atria. That's because they are pumping blood at high pressure. Pumping blood at high pressure. And it's worth then also noting, so we know that these walls of this one and this one are thicker than this chamber and this chamber. That is an adaptation, so we need to put that one down. We also then know that walls of the left ventricle, and you absolutely cannot use that abbreviation in your exam. I'm using that because it's 10 to 4 on a Thursday. Do not use an abbreviation in an exam. Use the full word. Prove to them that you know. Let's do it properly then. Left ventricle. Now, what I could do, not necessary, and it's not really going to save you much time. I'm just doing it to be a little bit lazy. In the exam, you will have time, so don't be lazy. Be a good scientist. Left ventricle. I could put LV there. I could, and then I'm allowed to refer to it as LV through the rest of the answer, and the examiner knows that I'm referring to that left ventricle. That is allowed, and indeed, when you go on to study science, they're going to let you do that with all sorts of things. But let's just be good scientists. So the walls of the left ventricle are much thicker than the right. And this is because it's got to pump blood at high pressure around your entire body. And that's tricky. So that is why we must have a much thicker left ventricle. Right ventricle is thinner because it is lower pressure to the lungs. Not got so far to go. because the heart is close to the lungs. So we could put that one in. Walls of right ventricle are thinner to pump blood to the lungs, which are relatively close. Okay, we've got a couple more. So you can see how adaptations of the heart could easily be a 6 marker. There's so much just from this one diagram, this one little sketch, and really your revision card at the end of your revision could just be this sketch, and you could talk for hours on it, because all of this stuff is implicit in your little diagram here. If you're able to label this correctly, you're then able to really carefully work all of this out. So we've got valves. Sorry, start again. 2 sets of valves, and they prevent backflow. And indeed, if you get damage to your valves, or your valves stop working properly, then your heart becomes less efficient and has to beat more to try and achieve the same. So, or indeed get larger to try and achieve the same as if they were working properly. So that's to prevent backflow. And what that means is when your right ventricle is squeezing, you're not pushing deoxygenated blood back into your body, because that would be bad. And similarly, when your left ventricle contracts, you're not pushing oxygenated blood back to the lungs, because then there will be less oxygenated blood being pushed to your body. So 2 valves between the atria and the ventricles are there to prevent backflow. Last couple then. The sides, these 2 sides of the heart, are separated by something called a septum. So these 2 sides of the heart are separated by the septum. And what the septum does is it prevents the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated. And indeed, if this bit doesn't seal properly, or there is damage to it, and you do start to get mixing, again, that means each pump of the heart, each pulse is going to be less efficient, because you're going to have a mix of oxygenated and deoxygenated going to the body, and you're going to have a mix of oxygenated and deoxygenated going to the lungs. Both of those are bad. Both of those reduce the efficiency. Finally, last couple, you've got a special type of muscle. Your heart is made of cardiac muscle. And that is a special type of muscle. And it doesn't fatigue in the same way that your skeletal muscle does. That's really important. So it's designed differently to the skeletal muscle, and therefore you don't feel fatigue as it works harder. And then finally, final adaptation is it's got those coronary arteries. And they supply the heart tissue. With oxygenated blood. And therefore, plenty of aerobic respiration. I'll do a little abbreviated therefore. And that aerobic respiration provides energy for muscle contractions. Okay, so we've got a diagram of the heart, and the diagrams can vary significantly. So it is worth practicing looking at a few different questions with a few different pictures of the heart and seeing if you can immediately go, okay, I remember what Mr. Frost said. He said, I'm looking for a thick wall somewhere, and they will make it look thicker in any sort of way. And I've been teaching this for many years, and I've been teaching this drawing for many years. This is how I've always drawn it. And sure enough, the paper last year in the summer had a diagram just like this. There was not fancy in any way. It was literally a box split into four, and sure enough, they had just shaded one side like this. And so for me, this is the best way to represent it, because I can remember this really clearly. I can sketch this really clearly. I can label it really quickly, and in labeling it, I've done number one. I'm able to do the pathway of the blood through the heart. I've done number two, the adaptations of the heart as well. And both of those are significant and chunky in terms of content. So if you're able to do that and get through that quite quickly and readily, and have that little diagram ready just to sketch out on your exam paper, then I think that's a really good place to be. Okay, so there's a couple more bits that we can look at with the heart, just two final little bits. Let's talk about your resting heart rate. Resting heart rate. The heart rate, the resting heart rate, is controlled by a group of cells in your right atrium. And that group of cells are called your pacemaker cells. And what they do is they coordinate the contraction of your heart. Coordinate the contraction of your heart. Up to a point, there is obviously a limit. The faster your heart beats, the more quickly oxygenated blood can be delivered to the body. When you're at rest, then the demand is low, isn't it? You don't actually need as much oxygen. Demand is low, and therefore you've got a lower heart rate. When you're exercising, the demand is higher, because you've got more muscle contractions requiring more energy and so more aerobic respiration. And therefore, we need a higher heart rate to supply more oxygen for that process. And what's really important is when you come to answer a question about this, that you're really clear in your comparative terminology. I'm saying that when I'm resting, there is a low demand because there isn't much aerobic respiration going on because I'm not doing many muscle contractions. When I'm exercising, the demand is higher. There are more contractions. They require more energy. The energy is supplied by more aerobic respiration, and the process of aerobic respiration requires a supply of more oxygen. And that shows really clearly that you understand how exercising is linked to heart rate. You've gone through this little pathway to say, well, increased heart rate because need more oxygen for more aerobic respiration, requiring supplying more energy for more muscle contractions. Really easy place to pick up all the marks that they're expecting you to, because you're able to say, I understand why this equals this, or why this happens when we're doing this thing. The final little bit of this puzzle is the fact that, and it's just a nice little note, your pacemaker cells send out an electrical signal for every beat. So if your resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute, 60 BPM, then pacemaker cells are sending out an electrical pulse, electrical signal every second. Sometimes this can go wrong. Sometimes these cells, particularly as you get older, these pacemaker cells can stop working quite as well. And so we can actually fit you with an artificial pacemaker. And what this is it's a device that corrects irregularities in the heart rate. So it's going to mimic the electrical signal from the pacemaker cells. And sure enough, it's a small electrical device that is able to do that. It's able to send a signal. It's implanted under your skin. There's a wire that delivers that electrical current right into your heart to keep your heart going at a more regular rate. Okay, we're just going to have a 1 minute pause there. And then what I'll say is let's move on to what happens when things go wrong. So we've done quite a lot on the heart there. What happens when things go wrong with your heart? Well, we know one of the non-communicable diseases, they're the ones that you're not going to catch. One of them is coronary heart disease. Sure enough, look, I'm going to put a bracket, CHD, coronary heart disease. Okay, we'll have a 1 minute pause, and then I will talk you through coronary heart disease, and then we will talk about how we treat it, because the treatments often come up in terms of the advantages and disadvantages and how we can treat you. So I have a 1 minute pause, and then we'll get straight back to it. Okay, coronary heart disease. Heart's made of cardiac muscle, and it needs a supply of blood, which delivers oxygen and glucose for respiration, as well as some other nutrients. And also, that blood supply is also taking away waste products, for example, carbon dioxide. And as we saw on our diagram before, the inside of the heart was the complexities of our drawing. But remember, I said when we put the top back on, put the front back on, and drew those little yellow lines, they were your coronary arteries. Now, the coronary arteries are branching all over the heart, supplying your heart with really lovely, rich blood supply. So what happens in coronary heart disease is layers of fat deposit themselves, or a fatty material, we should say, sometimes called a plaque, deposit themselves in your coronary arteries, and they begin to build up. And if your arteries begin to get partially or completely blocked, then you're going to have a reduced blood flow. So the blood flow is reduced. Blood flow reduced. And we're going to get two resultant issues. Number one, if it's a partial blockage, then we're going to have restricted blood flow. And this is going to cause severe chest pains. And this has a term, it's called angina. So angina is often an early signal that or an early sign, an early symptom that you have coronary heart disease, and you have these fatty materials building up, these plaques building up in your arteries, and you are suffering from quite serious chest pain because you are because the supply of oxygen to your heart muscles is not enough. Yeah, I think the questions are open. In fact, I'll turn chat on. I think that's turned on. Is it the same question as last time? I suspect you have somewhere to be. Absolutely fine. I'm going to carry on, and then I'll share the recording. Yeah, absolutely no trouble at all. I'll share the end of it. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to talk through coronary heart disease, and then I'm going to talk through the treatments, which is stents and then statins, and then going to go through heart valves. Yes, I'm aware of that, but I'll share the recording with you when it's all done. So I'm going to carry on. Okay, so we have a partial blockage causing angina. Secondly, then, second issue, we now get a fully blocked artery, complete blockage. And what that means is now those cells that are being supplied by that artery or that blood vessel are now not able to respire aerobically. And so a full blockage leads to a heart attack. And that means you have a blockage in your heart and the heart is no longer being supplied with oxygen, and therefore those cells are no longer respiring properly, and then those cells will begin to die. There's a couple of treatments then. What are we going to do to treat people who suffer from this? Two treatments we need to remember. We've got stents, which is inserting a physical bit of scaffolding to reopen the blood vessels, and we have statins, which is a chemical that we can, or a drug that we can get people to take, and that will reduce the deposition of the fatty materials. And both of these are good solutions, but both of them have disadvantages, and that's common. That's the common question: is what are the advantages and disadvantages of both? So let's do that. Advantages and disadvantages. Advantages and disadvantages. Excuse the spelling there. Let's start with stents. So they are effective at reducing the risk of heart attack as they widen the lumen of the artery. Remember, the lumen is the internal space here. So if this is your artery, and this bit here is the lumen. Make it 3D. However, they come with a risk of blood clots forming on the actual physical scaffolding that we put in. Obviously, this all is very miniature, but there is an increased risk of blood clots. So this is our first advantage and first disadvantage. Second advantage is they last a long time. So it's quite a good fix. You go in for surgery, they put the stent in, it opens up the blockage, the chest pain goes away, and it lasts for a relatively long time. However, I did say you've got to go in for surgery. Surgery has risk of infection. During surgery. Finally, it's a relatively minor surgery. And again, finally, on the disadvantages, there is a risk of damage to the vessels. Because if you imagine, we've got to insert a tube into your arteries, travel all the way through your body to the point in your heart where the blockage is. What we do is we blow up a small balloon that opens up that little scaffolding. That scaffolding stays open, the balloon deflates, we pull the balloon out. All of that has a risk of causing damage to your blood vessels. Okay, our second method is statins then. And what statins do is they reduce low density lipoproteins, LDLs, low density lipoproteins, which are bad cholesterol. Remember, high density lipoproteins, they're the ones you want. HDLs are the ones, high density lipoproteins, you want lots of those in your diet. Low density ones are the ones that are bad for you. So this actually reduces the risk of the buildup. Advantage number one. However, disadvantage number one, you've got to take them regularly. Bad to forget, and they're long term. You've got to take them regularly and very carefully for a very long time. Another advantage is they increase the level of HDLs in your blood. Those HDLs help remove LDLs, the low density lipoproteins that are bad for you. Second disadvantage, it takes a bit of time to have effect. Takes some time to have an effect. And finally, there are side effects of the drugs. And those side effects include muscle and joint pain, kidney and neurological problems. Okay, so we've now got the heart, the chambers of the heart, the blood flow through the heart, the advantages of the heart, and now we've got what happens if it goes wrong. We've got one of the non-communicable diseases, which is coronary heart disease, what it does, angina if it's a partial blockage, or heart attack if it's a full blockage, and then we've got a couple of treatments. We've got stents and statins. Stents being a physical treatment, and we've got some advantages and disadvantages, and then statins being a medicine, and again, we've got some advantages and some disadvantages. The final two things I would suggest you look up, so I'm going to finish it there. The final two things I suggest you look up is faulty heart valves and the treatments for that, and also heart transplants. But I will leave it there. Good luck with the rest of your exams, gents.